Welcome to the deep dive. We're diving into ancient Mesopotamia today. Specifically, the Babylonian civilization. You've sent in some really interesting sources
Yeah.
about how the Babylonians weren't just, builders, amazing builders, but also like pioneers in science,
Yeah.
especially math and astronomy. And honestly, this is a side of the Babylonians I never really thought about.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of forget about that stuff when you think about ancient civilizations, pyramids and pharaohs and all that.
Right.
But the Babylonians were really remarkable. I mean, they were real innovators, and their scientific achievements were like completely tied to their daily lives and the challenges of living in Mesopotamia.
And speaking of Mesopotamia, all of these sources point to this region as like super important to the Babylonian story. So what was it about this area that made it, such a good place for scientific advancement?
Well, Mesopotamia, it's often called the cradle of civilization, right?
Right.
It was situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that obviously made for fertile land, but it also meant, unpredictable floods. And so for the Babylonians, survival really depended on controlling those rivers. They had to be like masters of water management. And that's what drove some of their most incredible innovations in irrigation.
So we're talking about like more than just digging ditches, right?
Yeah.
What kind of sophisticated systems did they like come up with?
Well, think about it. They had complex networks of canals
Oh, wow.
and reservoirs, almost like ancient water highways.
Interesting.
That allowed them to direct water to crops and also deal with floods and droughts. They even built levees, those huge embankments. That requires some serious knowledge. I mean,
Yeah.
they had to understand how the river behaved, what the landscape was like. Just piling up dirt wouldn't cut it.
Right.
They had to calculate angles, materials, make sure the structure could withstand the pressure of the water.
This is like blowing my mind. I mean, the scale of those projects and the engineering knowledge involved.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. But did this focus on practical water management actually influence their scientific understanding in other areas? Like areas that don't seem related.
Absolutely. It's a classic example of how, when you need something, you got to figure it out. You innovate.
Right.
This constant interaction with their environment, predicting and managing the unpredictable, really honed their skills in observation, experimentation, innovation.
Right.
These skills, they were essential for survival, but then they were applied to other scientific pursuits.
So it's like it wasn't just keeping their crops alive. It was like developing a whole scientific mindset
Yeah.
that would then lead them to, these breakthroughs in math and astronomy and all that. Which brings us to, I think, one of the most interesting things about the Babylonians, their math. The sources mention this thing called the sexagesimal system. So what is that? And why did they use it?
So the sexagesimal system, it's a base 60 number system.
Base 60.
Yeah, 60 sounds crazy to us, right? We're used to base 10.
Yeah. Right.
But it actually had some advantages. For one thing, 60 has a lot of divisors, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30.
Oh.
It made calculations, especially with fractions, much easier.
Okay. I could see how that would be like really helpful in a society where, trade and measurements were so important.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is, we still see the system today. Think about how we measure time. 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour. And even a circle, the 360 degrees, all goes back to the Babylonians.
Wow. So those Babylonian mathematicians, they really shaped how we think about time and space even today. But let's not forget about algebra. They were like pioneers in that too, right? So how did they use it? Was it just theoretical, or did they use it for like practical stuff?
Oh, for the Babylonians, math was always practical. They used algebra to solve real-world problems.
Wow.
Trade, construction, land management. Imagine a Babylonian merchant. He wants to figure out the area of a plot of land to see how much it's worth for a trade. Right. They wouldn't just guess. They'd use algebra and geometry to get a precise answer.
So for them, algebra wasn't like this abstract concept.
Yeah.
It was a tool to, deal with their world, to make sure things were fair and accurate. Makes me wish I had learned it that way. Okay. So we've talked about their math. But the sources also mention these incredible star catalogs and lunar calendars. Sounds like they were really into astronomy.
They were.
But it was more than just stargazing, right? What were they trying to, figure out?
Well, For the Babylonians, astronomy was woven into everything: navigation, agriculture, religion.
Oh, wow.
They were really meticulous observers of the night sky,
Hmm.
recorded everything in detail, and those star catalogs, they mapped the positions of stars. Really important for navigation, especially for traders going long distances.
Okay.
And of course, agriculture depends on the seasons, which are tied to celestial cycles, right?
Yeah. That's amazing. So by watching the sky, they could, like, navigate their world
Mm-hmm.
and plan their harvests.
Exactly.
But what about those lunar calendars? How did those work?
Yeah.
And were they accurate?
Oh, the Babylonians, they really understood the moon. Their lunar calendar was based on the time it took for the moon to go through all its phases.
Mhm.
They tracked these phases meticulously to figure out the length of months and years. And get this, they were so good, they could even predict lunar eclipses
Wow. Predict eclipse.
just by watching and keeping records.
That's incredible. I mean, they were like serious astronomers.
Oh, yeah. And they laid the groundwork for later advancements in astronomy, but they didn't stop there. Their architecture and engineering were incredible too, like those ziggurats, those huge, impressive structures.
Yes, those ziggurats. I mean, how did they even build those things?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine without modern technology.
Right.
What kind of knowledge did they need to make something that massive? I mean, they're
Yeah.
mind-boggling, those ziggurats, even just looking at pictures, to think they built these massive, towering structures
Yeah.
without, like, cranes or power tools or anything like that. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
So what kind of, knowledge and skills did they need to be able to pull that off?
Well, building a ziggurat it was a huge undertaking. It required expertise in a lot of different areas. They needed to understand materials, how to transport these massive stones, sometimes over really long distances. And of course, structural engineering. Remember, these ziggurats were built to last. They had to withstand the elements for, centuries.
So it wasn't just about, like, stacking bricks in a pretty shape. I mean, there's some serious math and engineering involved, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So did they leave behind any clues about how they built these things? I mean, did they have, like, blueprints or something?
Well, we haven't found anything exactly like a blueprint, but archaeologists have found clay tablets with cuneiform writing.
Oh, wow.
And these tablets, they actually have mathematical calculations on them and diagrams of construction projects, even instructions for making bricks. So these findings, they give us a glimpse into their understanding of geometry, ratios, how they solved these complex engineering problems.
So it's like finding, like, a construction manual
Right.
from, thousands of years ago, hidden away in the ruins.
Exactly.
But it wasn't just about, the practical side of things, right? I mean, these ziggurats were also, like, religious centers.
Oh, absolutely. For the Babylonians, these ziggurats, they were more than just buildings. They were like a bridge between the earth and the heavens. They believed that these temples connected them to their gods. And each level of the ziggurat, it was dedicated to a specific deity, and they would perform rituals and ceremonies at the top.
So it wasn't just, like, showing off their engineering skills. It was also about, their beliefs and their connection to the cosmos.
Yeah, it really adds another layer of meaning to these structures.
It does. So speaking of, like, the cosmos, I'm curious about how the Babylonians viewed the universe. Like, did they think the Earth was flat? Did they know about other planets? What did they think was out there?
Well, their model of the universe was pretty different from ours today. They believed that the Earth was a flat disk surrounded by like a cosmic ocean.
The cosmic ocean?
Yeah. And the heavens above, they thought it was like a solid dome, and the sun and moon and stars, they were like celestial beings moving across this
A
dome.
flat Earth surrounded by water. Wow. That's pretty different from what we know now. But even with a different model of the universe, they were still making, really detailed observations. And they had those, like, sophisticated calendars.
Right. They were great observers. And their observations weren't just about, the stars and planets. They were also fascinated by things on Earth, like weather patterns, how rivers behaved. They wanted to understand the natural world and the cycles. They were looking for order and meaning in the patterns they saw.
So it sounds like this, like desire to understand the world around them, to find those patterns and make sense of everything. That was like a driving force behind all of their scientific pursuits.
I think it's a basic human thing, isn't it? Trying to make sense of where we fit in the universe, how things work. And for the Babylonians, that drive led them to develop not just, scientific knowledge, but also things like social structures
Yeah.
and legal
You're
systems.
talking about Hammurabi's Code, right?
Exactly. Hammurabi's Code.
One of the earliest, like, written legal systems that we know of.
Yeah, it's incredible. Inscribed on a giant stone.
Wow.
And it covered all kinds of legal issues: property rights, family law, business, crime. And it was based on this idea of, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Right.
Which might seem harsh to us, but at the time it was actually revolutionary. It was about ensuring fairness and preventing like excessive punishment.
So it wasn't just about punishment. It was also about creating a more just and orderly society.
Exactly. And the code shows that they had a sophisticated understanding of like human behavior, social dynamics, why you need laws to regulate how people interact. And it covered so many different situations. It really shows how they were trying to deal with the complexity of justice and social order.
It's amazing, I mean, how much they accomplished in so many areas: math, astronomy, engineering, law. It really makes you think about, how vibrant and intellectually curious they were.
Yeah, it does. And even though the Babylonian Empire eventually declined, their legacy didn't just disappear. Their innovations and knowledge, they were passed on, and they influenced other cultures and really shaped the course of history. The Greeks, for example, they learned a lot from the Babylonians about math and astronomy, and these ideas, they kept spreading through trade routes and, scholars sharing their work.
So it's like they planted these seeds of knowledge that kept growing and spreading even after their civilization was gone. So how did that happen? I mean, was it like a deliberate effort to, pass on their knowledge, or did it just happen naturally?
It was a little bit of both. I mean, there were definitely people who tried to preserve and transmit knowledge by, copying and translating texts. But knowledge also spreads in other ways, through trade, migration, even conquest. Ideas travel with people. Merchants, scholars, soldiers, they cross borders, and they influence different cultures.
So it was this mix of like deliberate preservation and just the natural flow of ideas that kept the Babylonian legacy alive.
Exactly. And that's why we can still see their influence today in how we measure time, our understanding of math, even in the foundations of, Western law.
Wow. It really shows how interconnected human knowledge is, how these ideas travel through time and space and shape, cultures and civilizations along the way. So I'm curious, what would you say are like the biggest Babylonian contributions? The things that still impact us today. Like, what parts of their knowledge have had the most lasting impact?
Yeah, it really is. It makes you think, like, will future civilizations look back at us and be like, man, those people were obsessed with the number 10? But beyond timekeeping, what other areas did they influence?
Well, their work in algebra and geometry, that was huge. I mean, they really laid the foundation for later breakthroughs in math.
Right.
The Babylonians, they weren't just playing around with numbers. They were using them to solve problems, like how to calculate the area of a field.
Yeah.
Or predicting, celestial events. It was a very practical approach to math.
Yeah.
And that really paved the way for later mathematicians, to develop more abstract and theoretical concepts.
And what about those star catalogs and the lunar calendars?
Oh, yeah. Those were really important, too. They must have had a big impact, right?
Absolutely. I mean, they're astronomical observations and calculations.
Right.
Super advanced for their time. They tracked the movements of stars and planets. They identified constellations and even predicted lunar eclipses.
Wow.
With amazing accuracy. And this knowledge, it wasn't just for fun. It was crucial for their religion, their agriculture,
Yeah.
even for navigation.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, it did all that with like just their eyes and some clay tablets to write on.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring. Their dedication to observation and being able to like see patterns in the night sky. Amazing.
I think it shows how curious humans are. We want to understand the world. The Babylonians, they weren't satisfied with just seeing things. They wanted to know why, how, when, and that's what drives all scientific progress.
Right. And it reminds us that, scientific discovery, it's a journey. It builds on what came before. We owe a lot to the Babylonians and to, all those other ancient civilizations.
For helping us understand the universe and our place in it. It's humbling, isn't it? We're part of this long line of people seeking knowledge, each generation adding their own discoveries to this tapestry of human understanding.
And it makes you wonder, like, what amazing breakthroughs are still to come? What mysteries will future generations solve? Building on what we've learned.
It's pretty exciting to think about. The pursuit of knowledge, it never ends. And thanks to, the Babylonians and others, we have this incredible legacy to build on.
Well, I think we can all agree we've learned a lot today about the Babylonians. They were clearly much more than just, builders. They were mathematicians, astrologers, engineers, legal thinkers. They shaped their own world
Mhm.
in the course of history.
Absolutely. And their story shows us that even these ancient civilizations, that seems so mysterious, they can teach us so much about, the human journey and our quest for knowledge.
So thanks for joining us on this fascinating exploration. And to everyone listening, keep those sources coming. We'll keep diving deep and uncovering these hidden treasures of knowledge and sharing them with you. Until next time, keep exploring.